Today we're talking to Mitali Mukherjee, Director of Journalist Programs at the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism and an outstanding journalist with 2 decades of experience. Let's jump right in, Mitali. Please tell me, what are the 3 most important developments in tech that young journalists in particular should bear in mind?
I would say that there's 3 things that young and established journalists should keep in mind. Number one, that technology will move faster than you are. It is evolving at a speed that news industry has not been able to keep up with. Number two, I think about touch points, the spots where technology can meet human expertise and really create something quite special and impactful, as we've seen with so much of data journalism. And I think that's really the sweet spot for journalism and technology. And I think 3, and for me, this is the most important, while analyzing technology and its impact on newsrooms, on jobs, on what's happening to the industry, it is so vital that we keep an eye on how we report on technology. Are we holding ourselves to the highest standards of accountability and responsibility while reporting on technology, while talking about the protagonists in this space, and the impact really on people's lives?
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here. Is what we do as journalists still relevant today? Because news avoidance is a real threat, not only to our jobs. People out there are overwhelmed. They're oversaturated with the news. That's what they say. So how do we even manage to still reach audiences at all?
As journalists, I think we need to go back and think a little bit more about what is the problem we're solving. We need to think deeper about the new space that we want to create for a changing audience, not the space that we've had in the past at the good old days. We really need to think harder about where it is that we want to go. I think we need to think a bit more about what trust and connection and context means to users. And finally, I would say, we tend to separate the two, but I think we need to think harder about the business of news. How is it changing? Where is it heading? Why is it that we are in a situation where there's very few winners and many, many losers across the news landscape? And what it really means to function against a well-entrenched social media universe. My sense is that journalists and journalism is not thinking enough about that.
Okay, and what about the other end of the stick? How do we get people to still be interested in journalism as a career, as a trade? Applications to J schools are falling, classes are shrinking, and at the same time, you know that many news outlets out there are, well, frankly, failing. Thousands of jobs have been lost in journalism just in the past few years. And you said it yourself. It's not a pretty picture. But what can we do to drum up support for our own cause?
I think it goes back to the age-old question. What is journalism? Is it a vocation? Is it a calling? Is it a public good where we are responsible for sort of gathering and disseminating information in public interest? And I think it's also, I don't want to hit a somber note, but the honest and hard truth is in many parts of the world, journalism is now a very, very difficult space to function in. You could be doing it at the risk of your life, and you could be doing it at the risk of those who you hold very dear as well. Which means that, to go back to your original point, sustainability per se is not a question that any one individual can answer while thinking about journalism, but it is a question for news leaders. It's a question for civil society. It's a question for the wider ecosystem. What does the rise of digital media, which is the space that most of news now functions in, mean for the role of media in democracy? What does it mean in an election year like the one we're living through at this point? And I think for individuals, to break it up, you have to start thinking a bit more about what you think is adding value. How are you adding value to the work that you're doing? How are you staying true to the role of reporting, which is really putting out the facts truthfully and accurately? And I think we need to sort of, just to go back to the boring side of it, dig down deeper into whether we're really achieving that.